How did you get to New York City?
How did I get to New York City? I was born in Western New York, so I am a transplant here. Yeah. Which I guess I've been here almost half my life at this point, though. So this really, truly does feel like home, and it was always where I wanted to be. I think even when I was a kid, I felt that there was an energy here, and everybody always talks about New York. And so as you grow up, even a kid from the sticks is going to have their eyes set on it, at least in some sort of way, especially if you play music or do something with the arts. Like I was always interested in the arts. So it was like, New York is where it's happening. I had a slightly roundabout detour to Boston to go to school for 2 years. And then I came here when I was 19. So I've mostly been here half-ish of my life. Yeah.
So where'd you grow up?
I grew up in Western New York in a town called Bemis Point. I was born in a city called Jamestown, which is probably more popular. Bemis Point is about 300 people and maybe 1,000 people in the surrounding village countryside area. It's very different from here. It's probably
near Chautauqua.
Yes, you know where Chautauqua is. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Wow. Okay. Crazy. Yeah. I grew up kind of near the amphitheater. But not quite, like 15 minutes away. So there were acts coming to play, and I got access to a lot of really cool stuff through Jamestown and through, folks who would come to the institution and so on. But yeah, from the middle of nowhere, pretty
crazy.
Much. Yeah.
Were you always musically inclined?
I loved music always. Yeah, my parents and grandparents loved music, and so nobody played at all. Like nobody had a guitar around or anything. I guess they bought me a flea market guitar that was beat up and barely playable when I was maybe 2, and I used to dance around to the songs. With it. Like I love music. It always was something that really resonated with me. I really loved country music when I was maybe 2-3 years old. Which I'm not into country really at all right now, especially not new country, maybe old country, but. That was what got me into music. I, loved dancing around to Garth Brooks and stuff. And then I discovered the Beatles, and that was really it for me. I fell in love with music at that point. I was probably 4 or 5 and memorized every lyric to every Beatles song. And my parents were like, okay, we should put him in music classes, because he's singing along to every song and all this stuff. And I was really interested in music. So that's how it all started. Yeah.
Other than Garth Brooks, were there any other country artists you were into? Oh,
man, Brooks and Dunn actually was the big one for me. I remember my dad went to see Brooks and Dunn, and that was probably the first time I felt jealousy as a little kid, was seeing my dad go to see Brooks and Dunn, because it was at 9 p.m. or something, which was an ungodly hour for a 3-year-old, I guess, and it was pretty amazing. He told me one of them, I don't remember which one wore the cowboy hat, but he told me he threw it into the audience, and I started crying because I thought that he would never get the hat back, So that was, I thought the hat was gone forever, and I was like, no. And but I think that was when I remember Dwight Yoakam.
Yeah.
My first show I ever saw was Sammy Kershaw. That was actually the first concert I ever went to. So I was really into country, kind of whatever was popular in the early 90s, I guess. Yeah.
Yoakam was from California, or he performed in California?
Maybe, yeah. Okay. I actually don't know. I just remember him from my country magazines. That's all I remember. Yeah. Okay. I had country magazine subscriber.
What was Bemis Point, Jamestown like at that time?
Things moved a lot more slowly when I lived back there. So I think when I go back now, it's changed a little bit. Not as much as it changes here, of course, but it's changed. Back then, growing up, there was there wasn't much going on. So I would go to my grandparents' house a lot, and I'd go see family. Family is such a huge thing, especially when you all live close to each other. So it was a lot of that. It was a lot of going to your friend's house and playing their Super Nintendo or whatever. I wasn't allowed to have video games as a kid, really. I had maybe a Game Boy when I was 8 or 9, but going over to friends' houses was always my chance to do stuff I couldn't do at home. So I could eat pizza and do all that stuff and watch cartoons. I had limited time to do that, but my mom was kind of strict with me in a good way. I would say it was good. I'm grateful for that now, but back then I was like, I wish I had a Sega Genesis.
I can relate.
Yeah, it's all good.
How did elementary school, middle school? I'd love to hear about how music became more of a serious part in your life.
Yeah, music was kind of like real life, and the rest of life was dreaming. I felt like as soon as I started to take it seriously, which is kind of from the beginning. I don't know. I always took what I was into very seriously, and I think that was another reason why my parents felt it was kind of important to get me started with music lessons. They saw that I kind of attacked everything pretty voraciously, and if I was into something, I was deep in it. I would learn everything there was to learn about it, and they were like, okay, he should do this. But it didn't really meld with the rest of my life until much later, I think. My school was not big, so there wasn't a big music program. There was only one music teacher at the school for elementary school, and there was a chorus and band teacher at the high school, and they were great, but the resources were just not super bountiful where I grew up for that sort of thing. So I mostly studied with just a private guitar teacher, this guy from the town over that was teaching me by ear, and once he ran out of stuff to teach me, he was like, you should probably find somebody you can teach your son how to read music and do all this stuff. And so almost by blind luck, my parents found a music program in Jamestown called the Infinity Program when I was around 10 years old. And that was perfect because it was exactly what I needed at that point in my life. I had just started taking piano lessons too. And so guitar and piano were kind of my two main things, but I had nobody to play with. And then from there, Infinity was like the school that I liked to go to. I would go there every day, basically after school, and play with young musicians, mostly older than me. I was generally like the youngest in the room, I would say. So I had a lot of mentors too, and people who would be, 18, 19, all the way up to 50s and 60s, guiding me at that age, which was pretty huge. So I loved to go there. It felt like, whatever daycare would be for a precocious young kid who loved music, like that was it, and then school, I was always good at school, but I didn't really care from that point forward increasingly more. So I would like get good grades, but as far as like investment in anything to do with my school for, sports or whatever it might be, like I didn't do any of it. I just didn't care. I didn't want to do it. I would. Yeah.
You said it was guitar and piano.
Guitar and piano. Yeah.
How did you know that those two instruments were for you?
I think part of it was by accident because I didn't understand the difference between guitar and bass when I was 6 or 7 when I first decided I wanted to do it. And I really thought that I was Paul McCartney, like innately. I used to tell people I was Paul McCartney when I was maybe 4 or 5, put on an accent and everything. Where's Paul? Where's my guitar? Like that sort of thing. And I thought that he played guitar, which he does, and it was his first instrument. He can shred on guitar, but like Paul played bass in the Beatles. I didn't know this. So my parents put me in guitar lessons, one, because there's guitar teachers are much more common than bass teachers. And also I just thought Paul played guitar, and that was it. Piano was more because my friends were taking it, actually. I was playing guitar, and then all my friends were like, we're in piano lessons. And that was the cool thing to do. And I was like, oh, I took guitar lessons and no one cares about guitar. So I went to this piano teacher that actually was an amazing, amazing person in my life around age 10 with a few of my other friends in school. And he was like lived in this random big house in the middle of the woods, and we all went there, and he'd teach all these young kids piano, and he was a phenomenal, phenomenal teacher. Yeah.
Could you tell from an early age that you not only loved it, but you had an aptitude for it?
It always came easy, I would say, but at the same time, music's kind of endless, so you would always find new challenges. Like from the beginning, it was something where I had an ear. I knew that I could hear things and repeat melodies and stuff like that, and that came really easily. But as far as the rest of it, I think I was always put into situations where I was out of my comfort zone and forced to improvise and learn something new and be around better musicians than me, which I think is a super important thing. Just like be around people who are better at something than you, or further in their artistic journey, or have something that you guys can like learn from each other. And that's why it was always maybe like I had an aptitude for it, but I never got too far ahead of myself with it because I always was in a position where I learn lessons and fail and like mess up and like play things and then look back and be like, oh, that was stupid and learn,
Did it really though start, you said earlier about how your parents would see that when you got, and I can relate to this, you get into something and you're fucking all in.
Oh, I was all about it.
So it really started with the love and the passion, and then everything else sort of followed. Yeah,
for sure. It was never like I was forced to practice or to like play music, or my parents were never like, you need to take like piano lessons and learn your scales and like drill me on it. They would notice if I was slacking off a little bit, as kids are wont to do. You get a little distracted, but I just wanted to do it all day, every day. And I would come home and learn songs all day and sing songs and put on concerts for myself and for my parents and record myself into a tape recorder, and just like I loved everything about it.
It was a natural interest.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you find it beautiful and cool? Like, how would you describe where the passion came from?
Yeah, it's such an abstract thing when you're a kid, and I think now your whole adult life, at least for me, it's like part of production is getting back to that thing that excites you innately and isn't like manufactured or whatever. What is the thing that felt deeper than a surface level experience? So I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it was all of the things that music can be to someone that has no terms to describe it, I guess. It was colorful and loud and textural and dynamic and emotion and and wordplay and harmony was another thing that I think I really felt at a young age. Chords made me feel something, especially once I started hearing more daring chordal music. But I'd say the Beatles are kind of like a textbook for what you should do as a songwriter in terms of chords. So like even then, harmony, I felt something when I would hear a chord progression move a certain way or hear notes interact in certain ways. And that was definitely part of the appeal. Part of the appeal is seeing people play guitar on stage, of course, and be like, wow, I want to do that. It looks so fucking cool, right? It's like the coolest thing to a kid who already hears music and like has a sort of feeling from it. So that was cool. Doing it with other people, of course, too, because there's such a joy, especially in improvisation and improvised music, to feel something new from someone else's dynamic and what they bring to the table, especially when they're good musicians, of course. It was all of it. And I think I had like a thirst that went beyond where I grew up and what was around. So there was always this like, what's out there, what's next kind of feeling about it.
What did the Beatles do that was so amazing?
Hard to sum it up, really. I mean, especially now as an adult, because I've come back to them so many times throughout my life. It was like the first thing that really made me realize this was for me. And then I got back into the Beatles again before college, and then took a break, and then again when I was touring super heavily. And then since then, I still listen to them, but I'm not like as deep anymore. It was kind of like learning a lot and then discovering different angles of what made them so great. So at the beginning, it was just the raw songwriting. I think the melody always speaks to everybody. That's something I constantly come back to just in my like philosophy about music, is the melody is number one. And I mean, in terms of the writing, the melodies are ubiquitous. I mean, almost anybody can sing them back. And so, whether it was people in my family who were tone deaf and couldn't play any music and didn't care, they could sing along, and a pro singer could sing along. A songwriting major can sit down and study it and see how genius it is from a technical standpoint. And that sort of thing gets you even when you don't get music. So I think that was the first thing that got me. And just the catchiness. I mean, the words, the phrases, like they have a way of making earworms, of course. They were one of the first groups, I feel like, that had hooks throughout a song. Every verse was a hook. Every chorus was a hook. Everything was a hook. It was all catchy. So that was the first side of it. Second side of it was musical sophistication. As I was going into school, I started to rediscover how a lot of these songs had pretty sophisticated harmony that escapes you when you're young and you don't know what's going on. And then once you see what's happening under the hood, you're like, wow, okay, this is intense. They were geniuses in terms of really naturally using harmony and melody and rhythm to bring everything to, a beautiful and perfect pop song, and then touring, it was the rest of it. It was being in it as a professional then at that point and seeing what they went through from the life standpoint of it. And it was kind of around this time that, the documentary craze went nuts, and there was a lot of funding going into all these podcasts and movies and documentaries about the Beatles. And so there was a deeper look, I think, into how they lived for people my age at, 23, 24, when things were popping off for them. It was like, okay, I see what they went through a little bit with touring and the burnout and the studio and having to balance all this. Obviously, it was a much different music industry and they were global superstars. But, for my little situation then, it was like, okay, there's a lot I can learn from this still. And how they went about going from their early 20s to their late 20s and 30s.
How did they live? They were just going, or how would you describe that?
Yeah, for them, I bet it was probably a blink and their 20s were over, right? But they went from being a skiffle band in London and working crazy hours, 6-hour gigs in Hamburg and in Liverpool, to really hone their chops. And then they blew up from there. And of course, the whole craze happened in America and the Ed Sullivan Show and all that. Yeah. And then I think they didn't really blink and they were just in the studio and touring constantly. And they put out an obscene amount of records, in the time that they were recording from 1963 to 69. I mean, they put out so much music. And I think between where recording was going at the time and the fact that touring was moving so much more slowly, like they couldn't hear themselves on stage and it was just screams and they were, being paraded around everywhere and they were probably all hyped up on methamphetamines and all sorts of stuff. And like, they were just not living healthy and they were like, we have to change this. And we love being in the studio and recorded music. That was, I guess, another reason why they're so amazing, and probably why I could like glaze them all day about this shit is that the studio was never used in the way that they used it until that time. I mean, the studio was never used as an instrument in that capacity until George Martin and them worked together and had the unique combination of freedom and funding and license to do whatever they wanted creatively. And that combination is very hard to find. And when they had it, it was magic. So I think they realized that, and they also got into drugs a little bit, and they were like, "We want to experiment, man." So they didn't want to be touring anymore and hyped up on uppers and having fans bombard them with stuff all hours of the day and not being able to go any place and all that. So and that's not to say that my touring experience was quite like that, but nonetheless, I got extremely burnt out in my early 20s and was like, okay, how do I get out of this and start doing something I really love, which is songcraft, which is, making music in the studio from the ground up, that sort of thing.
I'd love to get back to your story and,
Sure.
and your maybe it makes sense to talk about high school and the point at which you decided that this is something you actually might want to pursue as a professional.
Sure.
Do you remember when that happened?
Yeah, and that's actually a good continuation of what I went off on a tangent on earlier, which was the two lives of school and music. Through this Infinity program, I had this separate thread growing the whole time, and it really didn't become cool to play music in high school until I was probably in my mid-teens, 15, 16. Then people start noticing, oh yeah, this is kind of cool. Like you're doing something different from just like playing football or running track or whatever, you know? And girls started to take notice, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. That helps a lot. Yeah. Cause at first you're like, oh, this is the weird kid that doesn't play sports and he like doesn't hang out with people after school. Like what's he doing all day? And it's like, I was at band practice, with 3 different bands, and I was like practicing for my guitar lesson that's the next day and piano lesson the following day. And like, I have a gig on the weekend and all this stuff. Cause I was gigging too from like age 10 onward. So I was already kind of doing it as a professional, sort of. Infinity was really geared towards putting kids in bands and getting them out in front of audiences early. So I think my first gig there was on Lake Chautauqua. It was on this little floating stage that they built in Bemis Point. Played 3 songs with my funk project that was in the program. And then from there I was hooked. And I really did love gigging back then. But we played the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland. And then I started to play blues guitar, and that's when the professional side started to kick in already, probably when I was around 12 or 13. There was a blues competition in Buffalo called the Memphis. Well, it was actually the International Blues Challenge. If you won in Buffalo, you would go to Memphis and get to perform for this greater blues competition, which I don't know how I feel about competitions being part of the blues now, the more I study about music. And I'm glad that there's a way to bring blues to people and put blues in the schools and introduce young people to the blues. The competition side of it wasn't really for me. And I think that's another theme of my life that I carried with me was I don't really love competition in music in that kind of way. Friendly competition, yes, but like winning a prize is not really for me. So anyways, that's a short tangent. But I started doing that, and clubs and venues started to take notice. I was in the paper a few times, and they were like, can you come and play for 3 hours at our restaurant or at our bar? So my mom would drive me. I'd be like 13 or 14. I'd get X's on my hands, and I'd, get a little cup of Mountain Dew because that was the only time I could drink soda. And I'd play covers for people, and they'd like it, and they'd put tips in a jar, and I'd make like $100 for 3 hours or something and call it a day, But that was all going on while I was in school. I would play gigs on the weekends. I was in this blues band. I won the blues competition in Buffalo, went down to Memphis, and did not win down there, but met a young guitar player there. Named Chris Cotton, who lived in Toronto, which is about 3 hours from where I grew up. Yeah. So his dad had a project with him and his cousin called the Bluesers. They were playing around Canada quite a bit because he was a young like guitar prodigy type. So we combined forces. His family and my family got along really well, and so my mom would drive me up and drop me off with him and his dad, and they'd take me around. We'd do all these festivals. So I was like touring basically from when I was 13, roughly. Especially every summer, I would go up there and stay for a week, and we'd go and do Unionville Jazz Fest and Markham Jazz Fest and the Canadian National Exhibition and like all these things. And then I'd go back to home, I guess, during the summer and take my lessons and all that. And then sometimes it happened during the school year too. I'd go back to school and go for a week, and then Friday night my mom would drive me up, and I'd come back Sunday night and get to school Monday morning. I think I took the SAT on a night of like 3 hours of sleep getting back from a gig in Toronto the night before. But those worlds were very separate until 15 or 16, and then I was playing a little more around town, and kids would be able to get out of the house. They had cars, so they could come like see me play at the local restaurant or whatever, and it started to become a thing kids like to do. So it got to be more fun, and my social life started to grow a little bit. Whereas before I was just like, in the shed, as we say in the music world, just practicing all day, and playing gigs, and that's about it. So, I was always really kind of seeing it as a professional thing, and I was making money. I was like, selling CDs and recording myself and writing songs and all that. And I always had my eye set on like just doing it seriously, no matter what. So when I came to Berklee, I always had like a pretty good foundation under me for being able to navigate gigging and speaking to a crowd and playing in a band and navigating people's egos and personalities and writing songs and all these things. So it came in handy like crazy. And it was pretty painful having those worlds separate in high school and social life and music and all that until the end. And then it was like, okay, I'm glad I just like went through that for those years, and it was kind of like an outcast from high school,
So from early teenage years, it sounds like you already seemingly knew that this was going to be your thing. There was no oh, I'm going to go get training as an engineer or something like that at some university. It's like, this is the thing.
That was it. Yeah, 100%. I was already in from a very, very young age. I think, as soon as I started, I just knew that was it for me. And I had people try to give me advice to do other stuff, or even just pare it down. Like, you need to pick one instrument, or, hey, you should consider going to get a degree in something else, like IT or something. I mean, I've always been good with computers too, and that's kind of been a nice side effect of music and tech combining, is that recording and using a DAW came very easily to me, as well as the other sides of modern day production, which is keeping your files backed up in like file management and all these things that people don't generally have to worry about outside of work, but this is like people's art, and it's super important. So I have to think about all these things, and it's good to be able to set these systems up and just be able to navigate them super fast. So I don't know. I was just super lucky in that capacity to have that, but also I knew I didn't want to go into computers, and I didn't want to go into anything else. And I just wanted to full bore, put my head down and do music. Yeah.
What did you learn? You said managing different egos. The lessons you learned from how to do this professionally.
Oof.
You're super young at this point in your life.
Yeah.
What did you learn about what matters outside of just having the talent to perform and get people to come and see you? How do you turn pro?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the environment that Infinity put us in was the biggest part, because we were kids and we didn't have necessarily the words to describe how we were feeling in certain instances of conflict, but we had to figure it out. And we had adults there in the room with us to guide us, but also like we faced a lot of things that maybe you'll face it in a sports team, maybe, but it's a different beast, I think, because sports teams are just bigger. There's more people and there's more of a framework, whereas a band is pretty nebulous, and it's really hard to define a lot of these things. There's no referees in a band or anything like that. It's pretty amorphous, I guess, as like a structural entity. So especially as a kid, it's like when someone is feeling like a hot shot and mouthing off to people, or if somebody is constantly turning up late, or they're maybe, one of the less dire transgressions would be noodling over somebody at rehearsal or whatever it might be.
What does that mean?
Noodling. So like if the instructor was telling us, hey, okay, so check this song, this is what's going on, like listen to this part, this is why this is happening, and someone's sitting there playing their guitar and going bleep-a-doo-ba-doo-ba-doo over top of them because they can't, just stop playing for a second, listen. Listening is one of the biggest things. And I think you learn that musically before you even learn it personally sometimes too. I feel like I learned how to listen to people on the bandstand in a song before it felt extra comfortable to listen to people in a conversation, which was more like maybe age 16, 17, 18, that became something that made sense a little more, But yeah, you're really forced to learn communication outside of English, I think, which is another important thing. Being able to, especially in a band where you're like a family, and when you're on stage with improvised music, you're picking up on things that are really hard to break down into words, and definition. Yeah.
So taking it seriously, being a professional.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's kind of all the things that you can carry into most aspects of professional life.
True.
But work ethic too is another thing. I think that's the biggest ththing. You are taught very early on that you can't get by on talent alone, no matter how talented you are. Once you get, especially to the point where you're an adult, you just can't. Artists will flame out just as fast as they rose, subsisting only on talent. It takes, especially now, an immense amount of hard work to do anything in the music industry and make it sustainable. So from an early age, I had people in my circle being like, hey kid, like you're great at this, but when push comes to shove, like once you're in your 20s, you gotta be able to bring it. Like you can't just be like this hotshot kid, because once that's not a thing anymore, you've got to make people feel something with this, So, you learn rejection, in music as well. You definitely learn rejection a lot. You see other people make mistakes, and I think that was a bonus of being the young person in the room, is that I held my tongue a little bit and learned good lessons from seeing other people go a little too far, or not follow through, or say something egregious to somebody else, and see a blow up happen in front of me. And I was a fly on the wall for a lot of that. So then when it came to seeing those experiences as an adult, I knew a lot more about how to navigate them. They're a lot easier.
Are there any other mistakes you saw consistently outside of just bruising other people's egos unnecessarily?
Yeah, definitely money mistakes on other people's part. Especially as I got older, just seeing like club stiff people, and like seeing, band leaders not pay people, and seeing people get jerked around and have contracts, and then have tours get canceled, and like all sorts of stuff. Yeah, for sure. I think that was something where I saw human nature in a pretty real way, through that. Because also in the music industry, again, there's like not much security. You know, there's not a W-2, there's not a, you know, a health insurance plan, there's not a HR department you can go to when something goes wrong. It's like you're out there in the trenches and like you got to figure it out. And it's a community, luckily, people care about it. So there's the social contract in that kind of way, but there's a lot of fuckery happening in the music business, as everybody knows, you know, and it only has become more clear, especially with the internet, and especially with AI, and especially with everything that is happening now. There's a lot of unsavory practice that for some reason is just endemic to the music industry and other creative arts too. But yeah, definitely music.
How and why did you decide to go to Berklee?
Yeah. I don't know if I'd make the same decision now. Okay. But at that age, I think the prevailing advice was still to go to college no matter what, and that you were guaranteed a job when you got out of college. So especially where I grew up, where information doesn't really necessarily reach that area as quickly in some ways. I wouldn't say it's a particularly savvy place to grow up if you want to be in the music industry, because you're just not around record labels and you're not around people in the industry. So for me, Berklee was the only conduit to that, period. I mean, Infinity was a thing, but Infinity was basically like Berklee for being in high school. So I was like, how do I keep doing this? How do I keep meeting people my age, being around musicians better than me, being out of my comfort zone? And Berklee was really that. It was Berklee or move to New York and rough it. That was my plan. You know, people were like, have a plan B, apply to another college. And I was like, nope. Not going to do it because I was already gigging. You know, I knew that I could make a living doing it if I needed to, which was a very fortunate position to be in, that I even was able to, like, you know, have the experience and make the mistakes I needed to make to become a professional and be able to do that in the first place. But yeah, I knew that I couldn't be playing bars around Jamestown and going up to Toronto every weekend for the rest of my life. So Berklee was it. And I auditioned early action, got in, got not a full scholarship, but basically the tuition was covered. You know, I think they gave me something like $40K a year, and then the government helped a little bit with loans because, you know, where I grew up, economically depressed area. Like, you know, it was easy enough to have the government see that and be like, cool, we'll give you a little bit of money to help with this. And Berklee was obscenely expensive, like more expensive than NYU at the time. I don't know if it is anymore, but when I went, it was like roughly $60,000 or $70,000 a year to go, counting room and board. So I went and I was like, damn, this is a lot of money. I am going to be in so much debt the rest of my life just paying for room and board, because it was something like $10,000 a semester for room and board. So I was like, I'm going to have to go there for a very short time. That was always the idea. And I found a guy named Sivers who started the company CD Baby. Do you know about him?
Of course. I know him.
Oh, okay, cool.
I've had him on my other show twice.
Oh, no way. Okay.
I love Derek.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. We've connected and stayed in touch a little over the years, actually. He's such a personable guy. I mean, he's like down to meet you if you're down to meet him where he is, for sure, which is such a beautiful thing. He graduated Berklee in 5 semesters, and he put a guide on how to do it online. And I was like, I'm doing this.
From Kimbo.
Kimbo.
His teacher, Kimbo, I forget his last name, told him the standard pace is for chumps. He has an essay about that. And that essay is about basically moving at the pace that you want, not what other people expect. Anyways.
There it is. Okay. I didn't realize that was the name. I probably read that in one of his books or posts and just internalized it. But yeah, I was like, I'm going to do this. So I followed roughly his plan. I tested out of almost everything. Again, Infinity Project, shout out, because, oh my God, the instructors I had there prepped me for everything I needed to know. It was amazing. That was another reason why I think when I went for early action, I was like, oh, it's in the bag. Because like my guitar teacher was 6 years older than me, 7 years older. I don't remember, but he was going to school for guitar then. So he was teaching me college music theory, harmony and ear training. And he was doing the exercises that Berklee was going to test me on like 6 years later when I was 12, and teaching me about the modes and, you know, all of the different scales beyond just your standard major minor, and, you know, working in jazz harmony and analyzing chord charts and like all these things that you never really do until you're in college or when you're a pro. And I was already doing them. So I got super lucky, probably saved $70,000. I transferred in 70 credits. Between test outs, and I also took college classes in high school too. That was another super lucky thing. My high school had a program where they took the top 5 kids in the class, maybe top 4, and they let them just skip a grade and go to college for all of your science and math. So we would take a class at the high school and then go to labs at the local community college. So I like was able to knock out another 30 credits of college when I was a high schooler, along with a few of my classmates. So coming in, I was like, all right, I can actually do this, I think. I think Derek may have done liberal arts at a separate school, or maybe the liberal arts requirement was different when he was there. But by the time I had gone there, it was a full, like, you needed to take your full panel of liberal arts to get a degree. So that took care of all those for me. And then I tested into the highest levels of everything in theory, tested out of music production, a bunch of stuff. So I was like, I can do this. And I ended up graduating when I was 19, tested out after 5 semesters. And I was like, I'm out of here. I don't want to be in Boston anymore. I didn't really like Boston. I had my aunt and uncle and cousins were there and they were great to hang with. And that was kind of one of the only things I liked about Boston itself. The musicians I met at Berklee, phenomenal. Great people. Like the scene itself at Berklee was the thing that I took with me and is like why I am who I am today. But as far as the city of Boston, I'm sorry, it's not for me. It's fine, but it ain't for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So Derek helped guide you.
Yeah.
So how did you even know about him or learn about him and you reached out or?
Yeah, I put out 2 records when I was a kid through CD Baby. So I was like learning writing and production, writing songs, and my teachers at the time helped me record my albums at Infinity. So I had I did 2 full records, and the last one I got made through CD Baby, I distributed it through CD Baby and printed it on disc makers. I think they've merged now, but they were like pre-merger, and Derek was still like sending out personal emails at that time. That's one of his things. I think he talks about it in his books. Yeah. Like I don't know if he still does it, but back then, like he would email people personally if you reached out to him with a personal note. So I did, and I think he just followed along and was like, cool, man, like keep it up. And then I was like, hey, I'm going to Berklee. And he was like, cool, and sent me all that stuff. And then he did a clinic there. And we got to talk in person for the first time. And I was like, hey, I'm like midway through this plan and I think I'm going to do it. And then I graduated and sent it to him. And I was like, hey, I did it. Like, this is the thing, And he was like, oh, that's awesome, man. And we had a phone call, a couple phone calls, I think, because I was starting my solo. Oh, that was later, actually. So we talked then. I think I saw him do a talk outside of Berklee. And then when I started my solo career, he had put out 2 books and we had reconnected. I had sent him the things I was doing and he was like, how can I help? And so he connected me with somebody. We had a phone call. The connection didn't end up going anywhere, the person that he introduced me to, but we've just stayed in touch over the years too. And I've been like loosely following along with his travels since and all that. And I'll buy his books when they come out. Yeah. I like him a lot.
One of the people I admire most.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
Especially in the public sphere.
Yep.
I absolutely love and adore that guy.
Yeah.
So you get done and you move straight here. What did you know you wanted to do next?
I didn't quite know exactly what, and this is kind of part of the thing I was telling you about earlier with like one of the underlying themes of my 20s was trying to get back to what I loved about music. Because when I was at Berklee, I went to primarily be a piano player. And the thing that they gear you towards so much is gigging. If you're that, they're like, you got to get out there and gig. You got to get on a gig. You got to be playing for a big pop artist. You got to be playing for Lady Gaga, or whatever it might be. And that's what they tell you have to do. Or you have to be a killing jazz musician. And you got to be like, all right, your goal is to be a side person for, I loved Robert Glasper back then a lot, but like he was a piano player. So I obviously like couldn't have been his side man, but like a side person for somebody, Branford Marsalis or whatever. I mean, there were kids there who were playing with greats.
Yeah.
And so it was like, this is what you have to do. And I got into the gigging scene in Boston pretty early. I was, I was making enough to like pay my rent. I moved out of the dorms and stayed for 3 months in an apartment with some friends. And I was like, okay, I'm playing weddings, playing bars, that sort of thing with really, really good musicians. And all these guys are here playing, but they stayed here and they're still playing bars and they're like, 40, 50, something like that. And it's like, if you love that, hell yeah, do it. But I knew that at 40 and 50, I wasn't going to want to be doing that. So New York was always just where I was going to go. I didn't know quite what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to be doing what I was doing in Boston. So I got the opportunity to move here. My plan was to just stay in Boston and save some money because I had no money at all and I'd never paid rent before or anything. And then a friend of mine who runs a recording studio here, I played a concert there when I was in school, and then he was like, hey man, bunk's opening up in the studio. Like, you want to come live here? And I was like, hell yeah. And, I'm so down. I had like a couple $100 in my bank account. It was so dumb, but he needed someone to move in to help cover the rent, and I needed a place to live. And he was a really, really great guy. This guy, Tariq Khan, who's an amazing recording engineer, singer, tabla player, percussionist. He's a kind of a polymath type, and was another mentor of mine when I moved here, and somebody that I really admired as like a figure it out type guy, and gave me a lot of my like move to New York advice that helped me figure it out here when I was roughing it. So I moved down there, paid like $700 a month in rent to live in this little hole in the wall in Bushwick, in his studio in like a bunk. And it was a blessing in disguise because like it was a little rough from a living standpoint. I had no window, I had limited ventilation in the room. Like it probably was not legal for me to be living there. At the time it was okay. I was down and I was not going to complain at all because amazing musicians were coming in and out of that place. People who now are still doing it in a really cool way. Bilal, the soul singer, was recording a record there at the time. This band Snarky Puppy, a lot of their members were down the street, so they were there a lot. Louis Cato, who was kind of co-band leader on Colbert, I believe, and just an amazing like all-around musician. He was there a bunch. Mark Bowers, the guitar player from Kool and the Gang, was there a bunch. This guy Leonard, who is an amazing like funk bass player who plays, I don't know if he still plays at Groove, but like all these like New York folks who were just amazing musicians and people who opened all these doors for me as like a young guy in New York, and got me gigging pretty heavily here. Even if the gigs did not pay that well, I was so down. So New York was where I was always set on going, and I like stayed here and roughed it for like the first 9 months living in that bunk until I got a touring gig, and then life got a little better after that. Yeah.
Was your goal to get a touring gig and to do that in perpetuity? Where was your head at that point?
Yes, definitely my head was in that because Berklee was like, "Hey, this is how you make money doing this," and all my heroes were doing it. Yeah, that's just what it is. So, my heart was set on that too because I was like, I need to make money playing music. I am not getting a day job. I'm not doing this. I do not want to do it. So. I found other ways to make money in the off time besides music. I really love playing poker, and I was not of age to play in a casino, so I played in a few house games and found my way into New York's underground poker scene a little bit. It's like a crazy side quest I did in my early 20s, but I was good enough to pay my rent, mostly through online poker, just because you can play so many more hands on volume. But like I would still come here and I'd play, nights I didn't have a gig, I'd play from whenever the club opened to like 3 a.m. when people started doing degenerate gambling stuff like playing pop, No Limit Omaha and games that are just like absurd. So that was like how I spent the first 9 months here until I got a call to go back up to Boston and audition for Quincy Jones. That was kind of like the first like moment from the heavens where I was like, oh my God, I've been like toiling with, an overdrafted bank account. And like, I was going up to Boston to still play gigs and like playing these gigs here for $75 or $100 in a night. And like, just really not in a great state, in terms of like comfort and like, even being able to just like take care of myself. Like I was malnourished and like all this stuff. I was not taking good care of myself, grinding. And then, my friend basically who I did like cover gigs in Boston with, was like, the keyboard player can't make it. He lives in LA. Are you able to come up and do this audition? And I was like, sure. So I took the bus up. Bus almost gets stuck in the snow because it's the middle of winter. It was like so many things almost went wrong. We're like, the Bolt bus breaks down on the side of this like side road because they closed I-84 and we had to pull branches off a tree to get the bus out of a ditch and like all this crazy shit. And we finally show up to Boston 8 hours after we leave New York or something crazy like that. And I rehearsed with these guys for the first time. I'd never met any of these musicians before. They're all guys who I'd seen gig at Berklee. They're like 3 or 4 years older than me. I'm a little intimidated because I'm like, this could be the thing that like gets me out of like my awful life situation right now. And I could have like asked, I had family. I could have been like, hey, can you send me a couple $100? But I had so much pride that I did not want to. So I didn't. I was like, I'm going to rough it. And if I flame out and have to leave New York, fine. Then I'll like lick my wounds and admit defeat, but I'm not going to admit defeat otherwise. So I didn't and made it up there, did the audition, and got the gig. So after that, it was kind of a wrap, for a few years. Quincy was producing this young singer, Nikki Yanofsky, who was around my age, amazingly talented Canadian jazz singer at the time. And, she was looking for the next thing because she had done a jazz record and it wasn't quite what she wanted. She wanted to do a little more of an Amy Winehouse pop R&B thing. And he was like, go to Berklee, because I went there, and audition musicians there. So, that's what they did. And Quincy was her mentor, executive producer for 2.5 years, I'd like to say 3 years. And we traveled the world with him from like 2013 to 2015, like late 2015. And that was my life for that whole time. I felt like it was never going to end. It was amazing. That was a great first touring situation. And maybe only one tour has ever been quite that exhilarating since then, and I'm glad to just let it be that. That was the apex.
Tell me about Quincy Jones. Who is he?
Quincy Jones is the greatest record producer of all time, and even that I would say is an understatement, because he has done so much for entertainment and music that it's kind of hard to sum it all up. He's kind of like the Beatles. It's like this ungodly amount of things that you can just like delve into and be like, oh, his impact was there and there and there. Like he started out as a trumpet player, amazing trumpet player. Was I don't know if he studied with Clark Terry or that he was in his band, but he was a disciple of Clark Terry in some sort of way, and then had a horrific accident and was told that he couldn't play trumpet anymore. Because there was aneurysm, something in his head that was going to burst if he put too much pressure behind it. So he had to quit playing trumpet, and he was super talented. So it was like, what do you do? So he started writing, he started scoring and writing. So he scored, things for movies, for Sinatra, for all sorts of artists, and then made his way into record production from that. And found Michael Jackson. I can't remember how. I think through The Wiz was how he found Michael Jackson, but I don't think he produced his first official record until he was 43 or something like that. Up until that point, he was just the film scoring guy. And of course other things too, like, like Soul Bossa Nova is him, and like all these themes that you'll hear. Ironside, which was, I just watched Kill Bill again for the first time in like a few years, and that's all over Kill Bill, the theme from Ironside and stuff like that. You see his mark everywhere. And then Michael Jackson, of course, and from there he discovered so many people who are just ubiquitous. Oprah, Will Smith, like all these people. He started a communications company. He produced Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. His mark is endless. So at that point in his life, before he passed, he was really into giving back, as if he hadn't been his whole life. But especially then, he was mentoring a big group of young jazz musicians, mostly. So this was all part of that whole scene, and he called it Global Gumbo, and he would take us all on tour, and we played the biggest jazz festivals in the world and opened for all kinds of crazy people and met our heroes and got to cavort around Europe and Japan and all these places. It was a wild ride, man. It was great.
What did that do for your day-to-day living circumstances?
It changed everything. It changed everything for sure. I moved out of the breeding ground and got a room with a window. That was my first thing, Yeah, that was the biggest thing. But windowless rooms have been a theme in my life, and I put it in my bio because it's kind of been a thing. And I think I still gravitate towards like the cave-like small windowless room for when I make music. I don't know. There's you could probably unpack it endlessly as a therapist, and like it's like something womb-like about it, and like, I don't know, but whatever it is, I do function well in those kinds of situations, but you need a window, man. You need sunlight, So I got an apartment with my friend finally. I had a place to live that was like a proper apartment, even though I was never in it because I was touring. So that was another thing I learned. It was like, oh, I got to sublet this because I'm like paying, $1,000 a month, which back then that was rent and that was a lot of money. Yeah. And nowadays you can't find a room like that for $1,000 a month in Bushwick. But it was great, and we had a house we could have musicians at and play in the basement. So we had jam sessions over there all the time, which was dope. I got to live in New York more and go do things. So I could actually experience New York and finally feel like a New Yorker instead of like, somebody spinning the wheels trying to make something work. So I'd like, I was also of drinking age, which opened up the city a lot for me. Like when I moved here, I was 19. So I had to like, hassle door guys just to get let into the gig to play, and I would show up, let alone see gigs. And then it was like, oh, I can go out and I can go out with people and like, I can like have fun here. And so it opened up a lot. But at the same time, like I was also never here. So my living situation was like living out of a backpack and a roller bag, all the time. And then I also met my ex-wife around that time too. I met a girl when I was like 22, 21 in Poland. And so I was going back and forth between there a lot. And, basically I would go there and stay with her for a couple weeks, and then I'd go on tour, and then I'd come back here and she'd come here for a few weeks. And so that continued for about 1.5 years until we got married. But yeah, my life changed pretty quickly. A lot of stuff happened.
How long did that lifestyle appeal to you?
After getting married, it kind of, the writing was on the wall because it's really hard to keep a relationship going when you're touring. But even beyond that, there was a falling out. I'm not going to air anybody's dirty laundry, so I'll put it diplomatically. There was a falling out between Nikki's camp and Quincy's camp when we were on the way to play Soul Jazz Festival, I believe. We were on the way to a really big gig, and it became known between our camp that Quincy's team was no longer managing Nikki, and it had nothing to do with Quincy himself. It was just managerial stuff was not adding up. So at that point, her dad became manager, and then a few other people managed her, and it got a little convoluted, and I realized that I couldn't rely on that gig, which, of course, that's just what gigs are. It's like I got hit with the harsh reality that I couldn't be a jazz piano player for Quincy Jones for the rest of my life, and I wasn't just going to keep getting paid forever to do this touring thing. Like, tours happen in cycles, and it's a business, and like, if money gets lost, then you got to trim things somewhere. So the tours weren't as busy, and I had to come back here and get into gigging. And I was like, all right, I think I'm done touring for the time being, because I'm in this new marriage, and my friend opened a studio, one of my best friends in the world, who we collaborate to this very day, probably the most out of anybody in terms of studio capacity. And I was like, I'm here, I'm like putting down roots here. Let me do this, let me truly like do the New York thing now. 'Cause I've been a New Yorker, but not really, for 3 years. And, I just haven't really felt like I've given it the full go. And so I played here for 3 or so years and kind of decided that I wasn't really going to tour much anymore. Until one of the projects I was writing with blew up online. This artist, Ravina, had some songs that did really, really well on Spotify. And that got to the point where it became necessary to tour. And that's really what got me back on the road, mostly. Yeah. I was just playing people's original gigs here. That was the other thing. I was like, I'm not doing covers anymore. So I quit doing cover gigs aside from weddings at that point. And I was just playing people's original music at like Rockwood and pianos and like all these spots, again, for like maybe slightly more money than I was making before the Quincy tour, but not much more, like 150 a gig, stuff like that. And it wasn't easy. Again, I went from like being in a really great touring situation where it was like, cool, I've got work lined up through the end of the year, to like, okay, cool, I'm hustling gigs now in New York. And I got to like call people and be like, hey, I'm in town, like, motherfucker, let's work. Like, because like, that's one of the things about the music business. Like, once you go on tour, people forget you're from someplace, and it's like you come back to New York and like, oh, you still live here? Like, I thought you were like out touring and stuff. And it's like, no, like, you got to call me still, man. Like, it's not guaranteed. So yeah, I learned that really quickly too. And I was like, okay, I don't want to like sacrifice this thing I got going with all these cool original projects here to go back on tour for like a 5 or 6 month thing. And I did auditions. I auditioned for a few bands. And it just wasn't the right scenario. I got the calls for, I don't know, like a bunch of bigger indie bands. The Lemon Twigs was one. I think Unknown Mortal Orchestra. I don't know, like bands like that, but I was getting a lot of work in like the TV and like radio world here too. I started getting calls for like people to come here and do promo for their records, like Natasha Bedingfield and like folks like that. Like, I was in a scene where it was like, okay, cool, you've like leveled up to where people trust you to do these kinds of things. So those would come along, and I'd like make a buck here, and I'd go play Today Show here, and like go do a session here and there, and that was like kind of good for me, just running around New York with a keyboard on my back or a guitar in my hand all day, playing random gigs, and it was fun. It was a variety, it was better than touring for me because it was healthier, made more money. I could eat my own food generally, New York, everything's here. So it's like, I need a coffee. I walk down the street, go grab a coffee, come back. I'm not stuck in like Enterprise, Alabama or something, having to go to, I'm a vegetarian too. So it's like having to go to like, some place that has no options for me or whatever. And, it was cool, and it was fresh, and every day was something new, and it felt like it could go on forever. So I didn't plan on touring ever again until I needed to. Yeah.
If you're comfortable talking about it, how did you make marriage try to work with a woman who's in Poland?
Yes, yeah.
And you're here. I mean, even when you're stationary somewhere.
Yeah, well, she moved here, so that was the whole we got her the green card, which is part of the whole thing. Like we certainly we were in love, and we would have maybe gotten married had she been from here. But the big impetus to get married was to get her here, for sure. Because it was also like there was some weird stuff going on with Russia and Poland then. Where there were rumblings of a similar situation to what's happening with Russia and Ukraine now. And so there was just a lot of uncertainty, and me being young and naive, I was like, let's get you out of there. Like, let's just do this now. And, we definitely tried to make it work. It ended as a pandemic breakup, like many people's relationships did. But, there's a lot of good and bad, like any relationship that breaks up. But it was definitely tough, and I was gone for most of the first year that we were married because of touring, which was not easy for either of us, but we made it work, and it did work for 7 years. So it was something, but yeah.
But it sounds like you eventually reached a point where you were done with the touring experience.
Yeah.
How did you know it was time to hang it up?
I stopped getting excited when artists that I listened to would call me to come play with them. It was really what it was. I was like, this doesn't sound fun for me to go do this, It only really sounded fun once the project that I had helped write songs for blew up, because it felt super real. It was like, okay, oh wow, we're like going to Coachella, and there's going to be 20,000 people singing this song back at us as we play it. Like, that's a whole other level of touring, as opposed to just being a hired gun and going out there and doing it. So I think also just being here and playing gigs here and being able to come home to my own bed at night did wonders for keeping the relationship together as long as it was. So that was another thing, like just seeing the immediate difference. It's like, no, you have to be around your person to like make shit work. You can't just be FaceTiming every night. And it's like, you have to be able to go do things and experience life together and, you know, have coffee in the morning or whatever it might be that makes the relationship special. It's really hard to make that sustainable when you're a touring musician. And there are some couples out there that do it, and props to them.
Yeah.
You know, my wife now and I both play music. We're both producers, but you know, she has toured a bit recently, whereas she didn't at the time span that I did in my life. And I was the opposite, where now I was the stay-at-home partner for that. And so I, you know, saw it from the other side, and it's not easy being either person, you know, being at home or being on the road. But I think both of us are kind of set now on not doing it really all that much. Yeah.
So when you decided it's not fun anymore, the enthusiasm isn't there to be on the road, you shifted to doing hired work here in New York and also producing. Did that happen at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I should say I loved producing always, and it was one of the most enjoyable things about music for me, even as a teenager when I was learning it, because it seemed like such a holistic way to make music. Like a gig is ephemeral. It's just like you do it and it's over, and that's part of what makes it special.
Yeah.
But it's also part of what makes it really frustrating, because you share those moments with those people, and then it's like a little sad because it's over. You know, even on a tour, like the best part about touring, I should say, is the part on stage where you're out there playing the show. And that part is fun no matter what. Like I've always had fun on stage, but it's everything else that makes it not fun. You know, it's the intangibles and the very like mundane things about it that make it a drag. So like that part about it, great. But as far as production, everything about it I've always loved. It's like every song is a little puzzle, and you're always finding a way to realize what exists inside that little locked box that the song is, and also make it, you know, the best that it can be in terms of exemplifying what it's about. And that's such a deep thing to me that it always appealed a lot. So I started just doing my own shit, just continuing to write and make my own songs until I felt good about them, which took a lot of trial and error, especially as an adult. I took a long break from production at Berklee just to focus on piano. And I made beats and stuff a little bit, made hip hop beats and sampled things, but I really did not think of connecting writing songs to production until after Berklee. I was like, okay, I'm going to get great at piano and I'm going to make beats because they're fun to bob my head to, and I can learn mixing and all these things. But like, once I got out of it and got done touring on the Quincy thing, I was like, all right, I love doing this, and I have some stories to tell now after all this crazy shit that's happened to me in my early 20s. Like, let's get down to brass tacks and like make something exciting. And I made probably 100 songs of my own, most of which I never showed to anybody, that most of them were not worth putting out. So they're sitting on a hard drive somewhere, you know? And then finally felt good enough about songs to start putting them out. And that's when other people started to take notice and be like, hey, let's write, or let's work on something. And that's when production as a job finally became a thing. I was a studio rat anyways, just in terms of being around, seeing other engineers work, seeing other producers work, because I would get a lot of calls to play piano on sessions, especially. I think around like 2013 to 2017, there's a pretty big revival in piano music. Not that it's ever been like less popular. Everybody loves the piano, but like there were a lot of these piano covers coming out, and like there's a lot of money in like doing, you know, viral YouTube covers of things. And so all these artists would come in and hire me to play on their things, and then be like, hey, play on my record. And it was a lot of session work. And so I kind of found my way by accident being like, hey, let's, you know, maybe try this melodic thing here. Let's do this for the bridge. And then all of a sudden I had writing credit on stuff. And from there, then people would hear those songs and be like, hey, can we book a session? And it was just kind of a symbiotic learning experience from there with me and all these artists, you know, who, I mean, my first artist I produced as a job, Josh Thu, and I still work together today. And he's stuck with it and seen success. And it's one of the most rewarding, I think, things to see as somebody who like, that's like a day one, and he's now making it happen, you know, which is so cool. So, yeah, I guess the long-winded way of answering your question is to say that production was not as serious at the beginning until it just became a side hustle that then grew into my main hustle.
It's very difficult in my experience in life if you move out of the basement with no windows to go back.
Yeah.
And I always like to talk to artists about just the finance. You just used the phrase brass tacks, which I haven't heard in a while, but to get down to brass tacks of just the finances of all of this.
Yep.
What has paid the best? Like when you left the Quincy gig, was that a noticeable hit on your spending ability? Is producing really an excellent opportunity if you create the right kind of client list. I'd love to hear about just the business side of all of this.
Yeah, of course. It can be. I think the motivation is never to be like, this is going to be the thing that makes me rich or makes me money. Because if you set out with that in mind, especially with music, one, it's going to piss a lot of people off. But two, I think the music you make is not really going to be great, and it's not going to endure, really. I mean, it's not sustainable to really have that mindset. So I think my take on it was always like, how do I make this sustainable enough to enjoy it while also being sustainable for the artists to invest in and feel like they're getting that investment back in that sort of way.
Yeah.
And so for me, it was always that. And I think as a sideman, I learned the importance of the relationship with the artist and being able to just like be a cool person for the artist to be around, which in production is crucial. Like you play therapist as much as you play, musical like guru for them.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes that's what you need to unlock the song, to unlock the performance, to unlock the thing that brings out that magic. So, I want artists to feel like they're getting their money's worth, but I also want it to be something where I can continue to offer a high level of service to an artist. So it's been something that I've had to figure out again, like, like I said, where music is nebulous, like it's a free for all out here. There's a union, but it's not for what I do. Like the union is for Broadway gigs. It's for TV gigs. It's for getting your residuals when you have a song placement. It's for that sort of thing. It's not for like figuring out what rates to hire an artist as a producer. And there's not really a lot of dialogue on that. So it's the Wild West out here, man. I wish there was a more clear way to kind of educate musicians on business, because I think a lot of us suck at it and purposefully do so because it's a hard thing to balance with creativity. But there's like some initiatives like UMA and stuff like that where there's, by the people, for the people type union organizations. But I had to just figure it out through trial and error and being lucky enough to have diversified early on and have a lot of income streams. I think that's my advice to any person in the arts, period, is to diversify the hell out of what you do. Amass skills, amass knowledge, amass ways that you can spread out and be of value to people and do cool shit. Like unlock things in other people with your own abilities. And as somebody who recognized that I can like dive into stuff really quickly and get serious about shit, it's like, okay, how can I be like great at this and this and this and this? And so when someone comes to me with a project, I can see the things that need to happen and either do it myself or find the people in my network that can make it happen. So I've always worked on a sliding scale. I think that's one big part of the economics. I charge everybody different rates, and some might be like, that's not fair, but I think it is, because everybody's got a different situation. And I think the folks that are more privileged have made that clear and upfront when they come to me. Whether it's like, hey, I've got a banging day job. Like, what's your rate? I want to pay you what you're worth so we can make this happen and have you feel good about it. Versus somebody who's like, hey, I'm singing like 5 nights a week at this, the show in town. And like, I don't have like a day job other than this. And it's like, I'm not going to charge that person the amount of money I'm going to charge the person who's got like a healthcare industry gig or something like that. Cause it's like, it's just different capacities to pay, and one helps the other and everybody grows. So it's like, I have to think of it that way. And I feel like, I'm not a greedy person. I feel like I have a pretty low set of needs. I'm a pretty low maintenance person, I would say, so I set it at a level where I can not be worried about making ends, but not to a point where I'm like, what do I do with money? And so it's like, I'm like, I think I'm in a good place now where my passive income is like the nice cherries on top, where it's like, if I want to go on a vacation with my wife, we can go do it. We've got no kids, like we've got no property. We can just kind of go have fun and do that. But like, I'm not like, I'm going to fuck off and do nothing for a year, because it's like, no, I have to hustle. And that's also what keeps my muscle flexed as far as creativity. Like I'm hungry. I'm constantly hungry. I'm constantly writing, producing, finishing people's projects. Like I just have a voracious appetite for making music, and I never want that to stop. So I've set it at like kind of a good middle ground for me right now. And like, as the economy changes, I raise rates a little bit and I let folks know like, hey, can we do 50 more per session, this year? And it's a slow process. Like I'm never going to be like, hey, I'm doubling rates, but, I think I'm good at communicating with the folks I work with, and I bring more value to them than what they pay me for. So it's never an issue, and it never has been. And I think if folks aren't able to pay, I offer folks pretty lenient like situations where it can be like, this up front, and then figure out equity on the back end as far as making, residuals or royalties back. Like there's so many ways to do it that, I don't know. The most important thing to me is activity. It's doing the thing, putting it out, having people hear it, and keeping the pipeline going. Because like, for money and also for creativity, it's just so important. You can't get bogged down. You can't, or else you get stuck. Right. I think the thing that has paid the most, also to answer the other part of your question, is the shit that you never expect. The song that has probably paid me the most money is a song I wrote with Ravina and Aaron, one of my best friends, Aaron Lau, and Everett Orr, who was the producer of the track. The four of us wrote a song called If Only. That is Ravina's biggest song. I think it's been streamed probably 100 million times worldwide. It's been in 10 TV shows maybe or something like that. I've heard it walking onto Delta flights as I board to sit down. I've heard it in cafes, Ubers, like everywhere. That song we wrote in probably 20 minutes in Aaron's living room. It's got 5 chords in the song. Beautiful song. It taught me such a valuable lesson, which is that simplicity is often key in songwriting, and the most simple stuff is the stuff that most people will gravitate towards because you can grasp it. All this complex shit, like, sure, it's cool, but at the end of the day, if you want to reach people and make them feel something, start with simplicity for sure. That song has paid me so much more money than the time investment. Like, if you look at the hourly, I mean, it'd be insane for the 20 minutes that we put into that song versus the tours that it's, begotten, the number of, TV shows it's been in, the year after year writing royalties that come from it. And I'm not saying this is an insane amount of money. This isn't like buy your mom a house money, but it's like, cool. Like, my electricity bills are covered every month just from like, not even that one song, like a different song I wrote with Ravina. So it's like, that thing is cool. And it certainly has paid more than anything else as far as volume. It doesn't pay my rent every year by any means, but like, it's nice to have something like that passive income and be like, cool, we made this. And also, like, it's baby making music, so I'm sure there are little kids out there from that song, so that's cool too. Like, I've helped in the great miracle of life in some kind of way, even though I don't have kids of my own.
The ultimate gift.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You talked about multiple income streams. Do you think of yourself primarily at this point as a producer, and that's the primary revenue stream for you? Or how do you think about your identity and your opportunity for generating revenue at this point? Where's it coming from?
I'd say, if you were to boil it down empirically, if I were to start at the bottom, I'd say I'm an engineer before anything, because I'm good at putting things into systems and making them produce good results and making things get done. I think that's the other most valuable thing, even beyond what I can bring musically, which is like the thing I love. I think getting things done has been the biggest underlying theme in all of my work. It's like I show up, like I was always like the person to come in the most prepared, first person to rehearsal, first person to lobby call. Like, it's just, I take it so seriously because it's like, I recognize how insane of a lucky opportunity it is to be able to do this, So I kind of feel like that's the biggest thing for me. And so even as a producer, it's like I am a person that gets the project done. But beyond that, as far as what I see myself identity-wise as, I would say a producer, the glue that fills the cracks that makes the song happen. So if the song needs life, I'm going to give it life. If the song needs a melody, I'll give it melody. If the song needs a beat, I'm going to give it a beat, like that sort of thing. And a songwriter after that as well. I think, and oftentimes they're one and the same, but not always. Sometimes artists will come to me with a song they've already done and we're just realizing it. We're not going from the ground up. But yeah, those 3 things: engineer, producer, songwriter, in that order. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's next for you? What are you aspiring to at this point?
Yeah, I've got a lot of really cool projects happening right now. So I think the biggest thing with my main production gig is just continuing to help these artists grow and have new opportunities. Garth is doing big things right now. He's touring Europe. We're working on his new record, so that's very exciting.
Garth?
His name is just Garth, not Garth Brooks. Okay. He's like a funk soul. I don't even know what to call him because he's so multifaceted and so amazing at all the things. But he's an amazingly talented vocalist and artist who I've helped grow his career over the past few years. His record is exciting. Joshua Thu's record is about to drop. I'm going to the UK next month to do a video shoot with him. That record has Sabrina Claudio on a track, who's a pretty big name. So we're excited about that. It's the biggest thing I've mixed before. I mixed half the record. So it's like pretty big mix credit for me, which I'm excited about because I do like to mix, even though it's not my main thing. I have my own record, which is almost done. So that's exciting. I'm looking forward to that. I run a record label with my friends called Switch Hit Records. It's like, we call it a record label, but it's more of a cooperative. It's artist owned and operated. So it's us plus a few other artists. And we have a bunch of cool projects coming out over the next year. So that's exciting. And then I'm building a bunch of other side hustles on the side to try and figure out this crazy, landscape we live in. So that's fun too, trying to figure out the ways in which I can help people who I, write songs for and produce grow beyond just the musical side of things. How to break a song, how to make a song connect, how to reach people in this crazy, social media environment, like all these things. I'm working on those questions too. So those keep me, alive and well. Yeah.
So cool, man.
Yeah.
I always end these conversations by asking artists how they think about the word success. And I'd love to put that to you at this point in your life and career of how you think about that word. What does that word success mean to you? Yeah. What does it look like?
It's had a lot of different definitions to me for sure. Right now, I would say that success looks like the freedom to wake up and do something you love and feel like you got the energy to do it again tomorrow. That's what I would say. And if you're happy doing that, then hell yeah. Yeah, that's it.
That makes a good life.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Dude, great to meet you.
Great to meet you as well. Thank you for having me. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.